welcome address. Thank you.
Please confirm that you can hear me.
Hi, Caleb. Good afternoon. I can hear you.
Okay, great. I don't think we're recording yet, so please, if we can start recording, that'll be great.
We are recording now.
We're recording.
Okay, great. Thanks. Awesome. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and probably good evening, depending on what part of the world you are. I welcome everyone to the first part of the two-part series of the grad school hack organized by Hanson Bridges. So Hanson Bridges is a team of lawyers enthusiastic about helping the next generation of lawyers and ensuring that the hurdles to career success are obliterated. And it does this through mentorship for law school students across Nigeria. As the name tells, the team helps to hold the hands of these law school students throughout the law school process by providing necessary guidance, advice, and support to them, and also helps to bridge the career gap by organizing events and providing resources to help them prepare for the many vicissitudes of a legal career in Nigeria. 2 months ago, we organized the Meet the Recruiter event, where we brought the human resource leads of top firms across the country who shared their insights on what they were looking for and how these young lawyers could access the opportunities to work at their firms. Like that event, and indeed like the team Hanson Bridges itself, Grad School Hack was born out of an obvious need. This time, the need was to answer the many questions of Nigerian lawyers seeking to go to grad school. As someone who has been personally inundated with these questions and requests for reviews of personal statements, I can say that I know where the shoe bites. And thanks to the lovely team at Hanson Bridges, we have been able to pull this off. I must say that I'm very thankful to God for the idea of Hanson Bridges and for providing a team that is always ready to support events like this. I'm especially grateful to Eniola, Esther, and Oge, team leads for the teams that are making this event happen, and to every single person who worked hard on their teams. Time will not permit me to mention all your names, but I really appreciate all the hard work, the financial and time commitment, and the complete devotion to seeing this work out. We received an overwhelming number of registrations for this event, over 1,200 people, nothing we had ever imagined. And having to work around the logistics of this number would not have been the easiest thing to do. So again, I am grateful. I must also express my sincere gratitude to Mrs. Walla Joseph, a mentor that has become a friend. When we realized how our originally planned Zoom package could not contain the overwhelming number of people that would likely attend, we ran helter-skelter to find alternatives. Mrs. Joseph volunteered her account at no fee. If it were a physical event, it would be akin to her giving us a 500-person capacity hall in the heart of Lagos on a Saturday. And you all know what that means. So I say thank you. Grad School Hack has had a lot of intentional planning go into it. The facilitators are fellow Nigerians, regular people, if I may add, who gained admission, secured scholarships, and went on to attend some of the best schools across the world. We ensured to find the balance across schools in Canada, Europe, the UK, and the US, as well as across LLMs, JDs, MBAs, and PhDs, degrees that lawyers typically look to acquire abroad. We also considered the question of what happens after the LLM. So in the facilitator mix are people who have gone on to find jobs in these foreign jurisdictions and can share experiences on the process. The details of the part 2 slated to hold at the same time on September 4 should be out by early next week, and the registration will commence. I will not take any more time out of the speakers' time, so as I'm also eager to listen to them myself. I appreciate everyone who has made it here today, and I hope that this event answers all your pressing questions about grad school. I thank you all.
Thank you so much, Caleb, and thank you everyone again. So we'll kickstart the program, and I would like to welcome each of our speakers, and in no particular order, I just want them to introduce themselves to us, just inform us name, the grad school you attended or are currently attending, and what you currently do. So in no particular order, I'd like to start with Gabriel. Good afternoon, Gabriel. Hello, Gabriel, you're on mute.
Sorry, my apologies. I guess it's one of those things that happens. Yeah, so hello, everyone. Thank you, Yinka. Thanks, Caleb and the team for organizing this. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Gabriel Umodo. I attended the University of Cambridge, and I'm currently an associate at Queen Emmanuel in London.
All right, thank you, Caleb. Thank you, Gabriel. I'd like to invite Faith. Could you please introduce yourself to us? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's morning where I am. And thank you again to the organizers, Caleb, Oge, you've been fantastic in your communication, and the entire team. So thank you very much for the invite. I consider it an honor to be able to share my experience with others in the hope that it can benefit them to do something that they would want to do with their lives. So I'm Faith Adesua. I undertook my master's degree at Harvard Law School. I graduated, that was last year, May 2020, and I relocated to Canada from the US. And right now I work with Ernst & Young Law LLP, it's EY Law LLP, based out of Toronto in Canada. And prior to that, I have 11 years experience in Nigeria. I was called in Nigeria in 2009. And then called in New York, admitted to the New York bar April of this year. And I'm also a foreign legal consultant registered with the Law Society of Ontario. I just got that permit this month as well. Excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Faith, and congratulations on that. Can I please invite Victor? Hello, Victor. Good afternoon from here.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Yinka. Nice to see you again, and thank you to Caleb. Just gonna stand on all of the protocols that Faith and Gabriel already established. Really nice to be here. And well, my name is Victor. I finished from. Can you hear me? Okay, so I finished from Harvard this year, and I currently work in Allen and Overy in London.
Nice to meet you, Victor. Nice seeing you again. Hello, Mary. Nice to meet you again.
Hi, Gregory. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, can you hear me? Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary Adiemo.
Oh, hello, Mary. So please, can you just tell us where you're currently doing your postgraduate study and what you generally do? Just a brief introduction. Hi. So I'm not certain, but I think we've lost.
She's muted. She's muted.
Okay. Okay.
Hi, Gregory. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. I can.
Okay, thank you. Apologies. My name is Mary Ademo, and I currently work with Bangwani Ighodalo. I am a PhD candidate with the University of.
Thank you, Mary. And can I please ask Geoffrey to please introduce himself to us? Good afternoon from here, Geoffrey.
Hi, good afternoon. It's morning where I am, but good afternoon, everyone joining us. Thank you, Greg, for the introduction. And thank you to the organizers, Caleb, Oge, and everyone currently involved with Hands and Bridges. It's a pleasure to see that what started a few years ago, just as an initiative by Caleb, and which some of us helped to bet those couple of years ago, is still waxing strong. My name is Jeffrey Adon. I'm currently in Buffalo, New York State. I finished my LLM last year from New York University School of Law, and I'm currently a JD candidate at the University of Buffalo School of Law. Before now, I obtained my licensing in New York. So I'm currently an admitted attorney and a member of the New York State Bar.
Congratulations, Geoffrey, on your admission to the New York State Bar.
Thank you.
I would want to invite Simi. Hello, Simi. Could you please introduce yourself? Thank you.
Hi, Gregory. Hi, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you're joining from. Thank you so much for having me here. It's an honor to share my experience. My name is Simi. I finished from the McGill University in Canada, finished with the Master of Laws degree, and I'm currently a Master's of International Human Rights Law student at the University of Oxford and a graduate assistant at McGill University. Thank you.
Thank you, Simi. And finally, but not the least, can I get Temitayo?
Yes.
Hello, Temitayo.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Yinka. Hello, Caleb. Hello to the Ands and Bridges team. My name is Temitayo Ogumuku, but everyone calls me Tayo. I am a Nigerian lawyer. I did my LLM at the Institute for European Studies in Brussels, Belgium. I currently work as a legal counsel and I head the Nigerian desk and the sub-West African desk partially at ALA International Law Firm based in Belgium. It's a real pleasure to be here to share my experience with you guys.
All right, thank you so much, Temitayo. I will call on my co-host shortly to kickstart the first segment of the program. However, I would just like to inform participants on the general expectations from this program. So at the end of the program, would essentially want participants to be able to at least have some sort of knowledge base on 4 key areas. First would be the application process for admission into a postgraduate program. Next would be financing options for taking the postgraduate program. Third would be how to make most of your postgraduate program. And finally, we'll discuss on next steps and how to access opportunities using your postgraduate degree. Hello, Chioma.
Hi, Greg. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you for your time. We have quite a blend. So at first, Greg had said something as to us having people from the UK, Canada, US, but we also have someone from Belgium. So it's kind of like an intercontinental experience. I'm pretty excited about that. So what we will be doing is to approach things from different themes, and we think it's best to start our questions from the application process. So we got a lot of questions about the application process. So we'll just be starting from there. And the very first question, which occurred quite a number of times, is how best does one position himself or herself as an attractive applicant for a postgraduate program, say as an undergraduate or a fresh graduate? How do you start the process? How best do you position yourself to be the best possible candidate? So that's our first question. Geoffrey, would you like to take a stab at that?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Choma. It's a very interesting question, and it's one that has different legs to it. Are you an undergraduate? Are you a fresh graduate or an earlier career, somebody interested in graduate studies? But first of all, let me start where it all begins, which is during your undergraduate studies. The first thing you need to do really as an undergraduate is trying to realize and understand yourself and what you'd want to do with your career, irrespective of what you are studying. And when you've done that and the path to where you want to go in your future includes getting a graduate degree to enhance your opportunities or your chances, then you have your work kind of cut out for you. The things you need to do as an undergraduate essentially includes getting your grades to be on point. it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the best student in your class, but certainly getting into a top or a good graduate school requires that you have substantially good academic grades. That's like very important, is one of the primary things that graduate school admission offices consider in determining who to admit to their programs. So your grades is one of the things that will set you apart. And it doesn't have to be a first class. It can be a second class, but you need grade-wise to set yourself apart, because you are going to be competing with people from almost the 200 countries that we have in this world for the various graduate opportunities available in different schools. Then added to that, you also need to add other things to your resume, not just the academic grades. You need to show that you are a complete or a well-rounded person, which includes how many extracurricular opportunities or activities you were able to participate in as an undergraduate. Essentially, admission committees in various schools are not looking for bookworms. They are not looking for people who only can study for 9 hours, 20 hours, or people who are essentially very good at getting grades in school. They also need people who are good at other things, because what graduate schools do essentially is try to build a community of people from different places, and they need people with diverse experiences, diverse abilities in their programs, people who, from what they have done as undergraduates, either being the leader of your student association or doing other things while you're in school, playing football, being the captain of your school volleyball team, things like this. These are some of the things that they look at in determining whether somebody has the capacity to excel and become a leader in his or her field in the future. And these are some of the few things you need to do.
Right. Okay. So thank you for that, because another question that seemed to reoccur was the question of people who are already graduates and don't quite have a first class, or don't have a 2-1, maybe say a high 2-2. We also had a third class applicant who asked questions as to what such a person's prospect would be for getting into a postgraduate school or school for postgraduate program. So what are the chances, or what can a person do to enhance their chances, even if their undergraduate grade isn't excellent? Simi, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for the question. Before I move on to that, I'll just, pick up from where we stopped earlier about, what you should do to get the admission. But I think that the most important, or the crux of your application, is showing the admission committee or the school that you deserve to be in the program. And that will reflect in the passion and interest that you show for the program that you're applying for. And that interest and passion is also evidenced not just in your academic, experiences or your grade. It also reflects through your through other experiences. So it could be professional experiences or extracurricular activities or leadership experiences that you have. Moving on to your question about, if you don't have, perfect grades. First off, I know that some schools, especially like top tier schools, will give a cap. So they say that, the eligibility criteria could be certain GPAs. It could be 4.0, for example, even if they're allowed 2-1, it could be an upper 2-1. Some would say only first class graduates. So yes, the options that people or students might have would be limited, but it doesn't still, I don't think it restricts. You can still, in some instances, even in those schools that give those criteria, those restrictions, I feel like still apply. sell yourself, show them what you've done outside of your academic degree. But the chances are very slim because they have that, criteria. But then you have to look out for other schools that you obviously meet the eligibility criteria. But besides your grades, what did you do in school? What leadership experiences did you have? What extracurricular activities did you have? For law students, for example, were you part of a debate society or a Montamok society? So things like that also show that you are versed, you're well versed, and you have passion for what you're doing, and that you're committed to what you want to study. And then outside of your grades, what professional experience do you have in that area? So I feel like if you don't have the sufficient grades that the school requires, then you want to sell yourself outside of that. You want to show them what you've done outside of that and how you're able to perform excellently, regardless of what you had in your undergraduate degree.
Thank you, Simi. That's quite helpful. And I think it naturally flows into our next question, which has to do with experience. And I think Faith is in the best position to answer this because she mentioned that she had about 11 years of experience before she went on to Harvard to do her master's. So would like to know how important would you say that working experience is to getting into the best schools and to optimizing your experience of the postgraduate program?
Thanks, Chairman. So that's a very interesting question because if I want to share my personal experience, when I graduated from the university back in 2008 and I got called to bar, I was really young. I was 20 when I got called to bar in 2009. So I really wanted to go for my master's immediately, go for my PhD. I had all these grand plans in my head. And at that time, I applied to Harvard. I applied to, I think, Columbia and NYU. I was pretty confident that I was going to get in. And at that time, Columbia requires, I don't know if they still require it up to now, 2 years, like you should have at least a year of experience before applying, or to 2 years. So Columbia turned me down and they told me, when I have additional experience that I can reapply. Harvard turned me down, and the only place, I think NYU admitted me, but then I didn't get scholarship. So I felt, I don't even know where to start from in terms of raising money. I didn't have the energy. So I decided that I was going to focus on working instead. And then I started working. And of course, things happened. I continued working for like 10 years, because I then started my application process again in 2018. After I had acquired experience, I'd done criminal litigation, commercial litigation, I'd done corporate and commercial law. And then I applied, and all the universities I applied to, they all gave me admission. So Columbia, NYU, Harvard, and University of California, Berkeley. So the question is, what changed in the space of 10 years? And which is why my recommendation to people is that, firstly, never give up, and focus on the now, what you can do in the now to make a difference. To make a difference for yourself and for your career. So what I did, I first worked in a law firm because I knew I wanted to, after NYSC, have that background. And when I was an in-house counsel, I eventually moved in-house. I was assistant company secretary for a listed company before moving on to in-house counsel. I distinguished myself in my work. I threw my all into my work, and my colleagues that I worked with, my bosses that I worked with, they always all have great things to say about my work ethics, about my delivery on the job. I was very particular about my performance, getting feedback. I wasn't really doing this because, to be honest, I didn't really think, I always thought I was going to end up doing an online master's, because in the space of those 10 years, I got married, I had kids, and I was like, I'm going to have to do this online. I'm not going to be able to commit to going into class. So I was focusing on being the best at what I was doing at the time. And I guess that's the response to the question. Gaining experience, whatever it is you're doing now, whether because of finances, whether because of your grades, you don't think that you have what it takes at the now to apply, continue doing other things. Continue distinguishing yourself in your work. Continue going over and beyond. in what you're doing. And then I eventually won an award. So I won an award in 2018, which was at the Africa Legal Awards as the senior corporate counsel, like in Africa. And I went to Johannesburg to receive that award. And it was from that point that I was like, okay, I think it's time for me to do something else outside of Nigeria, which then spurred me to do those applications. So I'll definitely say that experience, because like someone had previously said, it's not just the grades are important, but the other things that you've done outside of your grades while you're working as well, the things you're doing. And I eventually when I went to Harvard, I actually went with my kids, which is another, story entirely for people that say that it doesn't matter the stage of life that you are, right now, basically, both for men and for women, you can pursue your dreams. That's the bottom line. So experience, yes, is very important. Getting relevant experience and excelling at that experience so that your boss will be able to write a reference for you, that when the admission committee sees it, they would know that, yeah, this person definitely has something to offer. I hope I answered your question, Chairman.
Yes, you did. That's extremely helpful. And I'm grateful that you also touched on the topic of rejection, because many times when you've had a rejection, you don't quite want to apply again to the same schools. So I think that's very helpful, and it might be something we'll revisit a bit later in the program. So, but then the other question I'd like to ask, and I think Temitayo can answer this question, is what influenced your decision, or what factors do you think an applicant should bear in mind when choosing not just the program, but also say the country where you choose to apply to for your program? So the choice of school, choice of country, choice of program.
Thank you very much, Shoma, for that question. This is a very fine question for me. I like to share my personal experience when I discuss this question, because I'm in a relatively unpopular country, right? You see people going to different countries, London countries in the West, and then you hear someone in Belgium, one small country with a population of about 10 million, and you wonder what exactly is happening. So when I started my law practice, I started at a very small law firm in Lagos, small but beautiful, with lots of very wide, broad areas of practice. And I was thrown into the fray from day one. Now, in the course of my practice, I got a lot of experience in a relatively short period of time. But at some point, I started feeling like, I was doing the same thing over and over again. It was kind of monotonous. And I felt that I had to specialize. And incidentally, I was friends with one brilliant chap, is deceased now. He used to be one of my best friends, Davise. He was studying his master's at the University of Hertfordshire, a specialization in data law. And then I'd had some bit of experience advising in that space. And I felt like, this is a nascent area in Nigeria. This is a rapidly evolving, but still unpopular area in Nigeria. I think it would be nice to kind of get some specialization in this space. So what did I do? One day, I just literally Googled schools offering data protection or data law globally. And then I realized that there was a lot of emphasis on the European space. Now, I think we all know that data protection, data law is quite big in Europe, particularly in Belgium, because Belgium is the capital of the EU. Brussels has all of the institutions of the EU, and the most comprehensive law on data protection originated from Brussels itself, from one of the institutions of the EU, the European Commission. So I saw a couple of schools in the Netherlands, the University of Leiden, the University of Maastricht, and the IES, the school that I attended. So a lot of factors, I consider a lot of factors eventually. First and foremost, the fact that the school that I went to was in Brussels. Brussels is the capital of the EU. It has the European Commission. In fact, the European Commission is just a few meters away from the school. So it's quite, I knew that I'd be getting lots of practice experience in that space. It's literally one of the best places to learn data protection globally. And I looked at some of the factors too. I looked at the admission requirements. It looked like I may be able to, I felt that, okay, yeah. So I realized that it was an advanced master's, not even a regular master's like many of the schools offer. It was an advanced LLM. I realized I was going to take a lot because you're required to have a master's degree before you qualify for the program. But fortunately for Nigerians, they kind of consider our law school as a master's degree. So I kind of met that criterion. Then I looked at other factors as well. I looked at the curriculum. I looked at the staff, the faculty. I looked at the cost as well. I'm sure that we know that tuition fees are significantly subsidized in Europe. So that kind of benefits people from our region. And then I made an application. I made a relatively strong application. I'm proud to then I had to reach out to lots of people that graduated, some alumni from the school. I had to reach out to them to give me tips on what to do particularly. And then when I eventually put in the application, it was successful. It took a while, but it came out. And I was even fortunate to get a significant scholarship to go for the program. So a lot of factors. The fact that I knew that I was going to this school to specialize, I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be an industry expert in data law. And that is something that is quickly materializing, by the way. I wanted great education too. I wanted to be close to the source. Brussels is the source of data. I wanted to have a beautiful experience too. So one of the beauties that the school offered was the diversity. I was in a class of 30 students from 20 different countries. I was in the EU where I could get to travel everywhere, visa-free, 27 countries visa-free. I was 5 or 6 hours away from home. So I looked at all of these factors, and yeah, it felt like the best decision then. And yeah, so that was it for me. So you looked at all those things, you looked at cost, you look at your future aspirations, what exactly you're looking for. Do you want to be an industry expert? Do you want to be good at something, really good at something? You want to be known at something? You look at the postgraduate opportunities too that avail you, right? You're stepping into a market. When you finish, obviously you want to get some form of work experience in the jurisdiction where you are, and you need to consider that as well. Do you want to go back home, or do you want to stay here and practice and learn from the best? So those are the things that I looked at, and I think that those are the things that people should look at before making key decisions like this. Because very importantly, when you're applying for postgraduate studies, I tell people that a lot of people want to go for masters because they want to Japan, right? They want to leave the country. But I think that you can kill multiple birds with one stone. You don't necessarily have to travel because you don't necessarily have to do a master's because you want to travel, right? You can do a master's degree, have the best education, right? Network, meet the best people, get experience, get something from the labor market when you graduate. So look at all of these things holistically, look at them broadly, and then try to make the most of everything. Thank you, Chama.
That's very helpful, Temitayo. Thank you. I find that very helpful. And I think that since you've mentioned the issue of how you had to draft your application and reach out to other people, I think it leads us to the next big question, which is really how best do we go about the packaging, so to speak? So making a really great application, how do you make a great pitch? So the letter of intent, personal statement, depending on the jurisdiction you're in, who should be our referees? Do you think if you're working, or like, should we go back to school, those sorts of things? And I think, Victor, you said you finished this year. So I think that might be something that you could help us with, since you're a very recent graduate. And then maybe Gabriel could also chip in since he studied in the UK. So that would be interesting to hear.
Sure, thanks, Joma. Okay, so that's a big question because it has a lot of branches to it. How do you make a great application? Who should be your referee? And all of that. I think I would typically progress from the perspective that you are both the cake and the icing, and the graduate school is maybe the pan or something. A lot of people, if you want to go to a school like Cambridge, for example, you're thinking, oh, this is going to be an icing on my cake. This school is such a great school. I want to. Those schools are looking for people who are well-made, moist, eatable cakes to add to their own, to feather their own cups. And so always look at yourself as someone who is going to contribute, someone who the school will be proud of. And so when you're making your application, the first thing you have to put in your mind is, will anyone who sees this application want to have me? Will I admit myself into this program? And we also have to realize that it's, especially for depending on the kind of schools you want to go to, it could be very competitive, and there are people who have gone way ahead of you. And I think Geoffrey mentioned this point. You're probably applying. Oh no, was it Geoffrey? I think it was Geoffrey. You're applying against or competing against about 200 countries, people from 200 countries in the world, and you're probably thinking about how do you distinguish yourself. The first thing to ensure to do is to make your own application different from every other application. You can't copy personal statements, for example. Your personal statement or your statement of purpose has to be specific to your story. It has to show someone who is on a journey. And a lot of times what we do is we want to do everything and we're really hitting at nothing. If you know, and I think for the most part, you want to have an idea of what you want to do in your master's degree or your postgraduate degree, and you want to be pursuing activities in that regard from the onset so that you can speak to them when writing your application. I think the graduate committees want to see someone who is consistent, someone who knows what you're doing, someone who's going to add something to your program. So if you say you want to do corporate law in your master's program, it's helpful, especially if you don't have, for example, a first class, I would say. It's helpful if you are working in corporate law or you're doing stuff within the space that defines someone who knows what they want to achieve in the program. They don't want someone who is filibustering, if you know what I mean. They don't want someone who is trying to hit at many things at the same time. And so a good application would normally inure from someone who has an interesting story, someone who is on the consistent pattern to achieve something. And your graduate committee can see that from your application. So I think I mentioned you can't copy personal statements. It has to be personal, it has to be specific, and you have to distinguish as a person who knows what they are doing. In terms of a reference or references what you can get, the first point is always, it's not really about the title of the persons who are going to make a reference for you. It's about the quality of the recommendation. You want a person who will sing your very high praises. And I don't mean someone who would lie, but I mean someone who would be able to say, I know Tayo, for example. I know what he has done. He worked in this. And Faith alluded to that when she was talking. Talked about how she worked so hard that when it was time for them to recommend her, you could tell how flattering our letters must have been. And I think academic letters are very powerful because there's this academic honor that exists within the academia, so that when they see a very well written and letter that sings your high praises from an academic, there's a sense in which they apply more weight to you than to that letter, because they think that, oh, a fellow academic has said this about this person, must be true, right? So especially if you've not left school a long time ago, if you've left like 2 years or 1 year when you're applying, you want to have a letter that speaks, and not just a letter from an academic who will sing high praises of you, but a letter from an academic, preferably who is in the area you're trying to do your master's in. So you want to get a letter from, let's say, a company law lecturer who really knows you if you're applying for a corporate law degree. It's just going to help you. It doesn't guarantee anything, right? And also at work, you don't need to get, if you're working in a law firm, you don't need to get a partner. You don't even need to get a senior associate. That's preferable. But if you can get someone who has worked with you, who has significant experience with your work style and can speak very highly about your work ethic and your work product, I think you'll be in a good point of advantage. So those are probably my top 2 points for how you submitting a great application.
And they're very helpful. They're extremely helpful. Gabriel, would you like to chip in anything extra? I know you also had a bit of working experience before you did your master's, so it would be interesting to hear what you have to say.
Yes, thanks, Choma. I'm fortunate enough to have had Victor do 90% of the work for me. So like Supreme Court justices do when they don't have anything to say. They say, I have nothing useful to add. So Victor has just said it all. And the very little that I'm going to add is to say that you should find a referee that likes you. You should find a referee that likes you. And then find a referee that has time for you, someone who will give you a strong recommendation. Victor emphasized so much on that. And then, yes, and he made a very important point regarding titles. So it's not about the title of the person giving you a recommendation, it's about what they're saying. So you may have the vice chancellor of your school give a recommendation that's not as strong as one that would have been given by a senior lecturer. So you want to you want to reach out to someone who's going to give you a very strong recommendation. And what is a very strong recommendation, really? It's one that doesn't say that Victor is driven, Victor is highly motivated. It's one that tells why that person believes that Victor is driven and that they're highly motivated. So, because graduate committees get thousands and thousands of applications, particularly in the top schools. So they don't want to be reading conclusions and assumptions. They want to see real examples. So you want to reach out to someone who's going to, like they say in Nigerian parlance, show your workings, right? Rather than just reaching conclusions. And this also applies to personal statements, by the way. But I guess we're going to come into that eventually. So this person has to know you very well. And, because if they don't know who you are, let's say because they didn't teach you or because they just took passive interest in you, it will be hard for them to convince another person that you deserve a chance. So I think just like I said, Victor has done 90% of the work. So yeah, but I'm happy to answer any other follow-up questions that you may have.
Can I just quickly speak to the issue of this, references, right?
Absolutely.
In Europe, there are two ways that schools ask for academic references. They either ask you to upload typed references or they send a link to your reference. Now for the former, this is what I recommend. This is what I do. I suggest that when you've identified your reference, why don't you write that reference yourself? I don't think that anybody would describe me better than myself. Do a draft just to give the reference an idea of what you think. I've done this, and two of my biggest references right now are some of the senior professors of the schools, the school that I graduated from, senior members of the European Commission as well. That's what they will tell you. That if you want us to write you a reference, we know you. I was a student rep. I was a class rep of my LLM program. Said, yeah, we know you. We know your work ethic. We know what you've done. We know your precedent. But give us an idea of what you want, right? Yes, I will flatter you. Yes, I will paint a very nice picture of you. But I believe that there are some qualities that you would want us to speak to as well. So do a draft just to give us an idea of what they would like to write. And when they see it, they can either tweak it themselves and then, review it to infuse it with their own perspective of view as well. And also when you do that, you make it relatively easy for the reference. They don't have to sit down and start racking their brains and all of that. It just makes it very easy for them. When they have a draft, they have something with which to work and just make the process easier. Thank you, Chema.
Right. Thank you, Timothy. I saw Faith shake her head, so I think she has something of contrary. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. Am I unmuted? I think so. I just wanted to chime in that writing references by yourself is actually not permitted.
That's not my point. That's not my point, actually. I wasn't saying that you write it yourself. What I said was that you give the reference something to work with. Of course, they'll have to write the reference eventually, but they have a broad picture, and then they can either work on it and infuse it with their own perspective of view.
Okay, so if I would just rephrase that, I would say that and this is the general advice, when you identify your reference in your introductory email, whether you're sending email or you're calling the person, it's advised to actually send an email. You want to remind the person of how the person got to know you. Because if you have a lecturer that lectures 700 people as average of 700 students per year, even if you graduated this year, or you graduated 4 years ago, 5 years ago, you just want to remind the person, okay, I took your intellectual property class. I was head of, this group in your class. I did X, Y, Z. So just pointers to refresh the person's memory of how you knew the person, but not like, I just felt that I really needed to point that out, that writing your references by yourself is actually, and it's actually stated as one of the requirements on admission websites for various universities, but it's okay in your introductory communication where you're requesting your professor or your boss to to write a reference for you, kind of just refresh the person's memory to say, these are some of the things I've done in the past, this is how I got to know you, so that the person kind of truly remembers who you are, and then can put that in context in drafting the reference. I just felt I needed to just chip that in.
Great. Gabriel also has something to say.
Yeah, thanks. I just thought I should add that.
Thank you, Temitayo.
So can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add that, this takes us back to the point I made about reaching out to someone who knows you, because you don't want to be in this difficult situation where you're having to refresh someone's memory. Of course, I know there are those, rare cases where you need a big shot to give you a reference, but they don't know you so well, and you need to juggle their memories back and all of that. But I'll give a personal example. When I got an offer for a job, the prospective employer wanted a reference from people who could speak about me. So what that referee did was, and what I did was to send my CV to this referee. And in fact, the referee I reached out to was someone who had taught me in Cambridge and who knew me personally. In fact, was someone who, during our interactive classes, I asked a lot of questions, so it was very easy. All I needed to do was send my CV, and my CV was detailed enough to provide all the information that person needed. And when I saw the reference, I was like, I told myself, nah, no one who reads this reference won't want to, who won't be positively disposed to the subject matter of the reference. So I think it makes the work very easy for you to go to someone who knows you very well. But I totally agree with Faith that if you find yourself in a situation where that person doesn't know you so well, you don't need to let them ask you for those details, that they need to do a good reference for you. So you owe it to them as a duty, so to say, to provide some background and basically give them the raw material, so to say, that they need to do what you've asked them to do for you.
That's extremely helpful. Thank you, everybody, for pitching in. And I think it's a great time to speak to Mary, because Mary is a PhD candidate, and I just really wanted to learn from her what would you say is the best time to? Oh wow. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Right, great. I was saying, when would you say is the best time to start your applications? So you've done your master's and your PhD. So when would you say is the best time? I know that application windows tend to open sometime in August or September. When would you really say is the optimal time to basically make your application? I think that time is an important thing. So would like you to speak on that. And did you make your application for your PhD whilst you were running your master's program? Because most schools require that you have, like, you've done your LLM first. So how did you navigate that?
Thank you very much, Chioma. Let me say first and foremost that the best time for you to do anything is now. So even if you'll be going for your PhD in 2 years' time, or even next tomorrow, just start now. As soon as you have conceived the idea, you should start working towards it, because that's the best time for you to start. Because as fast as I may be able to go, may not be as swift as you may be, rather, if there's anything like that. Sorry. So my point is, if you conceive the idea now, if you conceive the idea today, you should start now, because the requirement for school A may be different from school B. But one thing is constant, you are constant. And with regards to whether having a master's for a PhD, I do not have a master's, I just applied. I thought of it and I just applied. It was quite foolish. I mean, many people have condemned me. Some of my recommenders were even scared for me because they felt, oh, this is like I'm playing away this slot. A master's is more, is best for me. At least the chances are higher that I was going to get in. But I just felt, well, this is just one school. I'm going to apply for master's for every other school. But for this school, I'm going to apply for a PhD. And I did apply, even though I had imposter syndrome at some point. And that's the reality of life. they're going to do something. If you're not double-minded about it at some point, then I'm not sure you are ready for it. So I submitted my application 2 days to deadline because I wasn't confident enough that I was going to get in. But if I did not submit my application, I wouldn't be here. So the point is, as soon as you conceive the idea, work towards it and start your application, because what may work for Mary may not work for Chioma and may not work for Gabriel. So the only constant that I said is me. Mary is constant, Chioma is constant, Gabriel is constant. But our time, the ability to manage time is not constant. Our references are not constant. Whatever we want to do is not constant. I don't know if I was able to answer your question.
Right, that's extremely helpful, because I mean, that's interesting that you didn't even do your master's before you got in. So it was like you were speaking to me, but to me. So thank you for that. So I'm now going to hand over the mic to Gregory to carry on with the next session of the event. But thank you so much for your response.
Yeah, thank you so much, speakers and Chioma as well. So this other segment will just focus on financing a postgraduate study. And essentially, it's well known that financing is very important, and it can make or mar whether or not you go for that postgraduate study. So in particular, I would like to ask, Mary, what exactly in terms of what tips would you generally recommend or for people to bear in mind when applying for masters in terms of financing? So I mean, there are scholarship options, but what else could probably come in mind for that person in terms of financing a postgraduate study?
Okay, thank you very much, Gregory. What I'll first like to state is that financing is not just financing your school fee or your tuition fee. Financing actually starts from your transcript application, the application for your fee, the application fee for the individual schools that you're applying to. So it's a lot of money when you look at it. It is cost intensive. So I'm going to give my personal experience. For example, I heard of Columbia University application. I mean, I knew of it on the day of the deadline, and I did not have anything. Like, I just had myself, like I earlier mentioned. And what did I do is, there was this application waiver for the fee waiver application. And the instruction is that when you make your application, it should take at least 2 to 3 days for them to revert to you. But man, Mary being a Nigerian, I made the application. They came back to me on the 18th of December was the last day, to enter the application, to make the application to the school, everything. And that was the day I started my application. I sent it to them by 1:30 Nigerian time. And they got back to me like, oh, madam, the deadline, like it will take 2 to 3 days to respond. I said, oh, I know, but I know that today's the deadline and I'm expecting a response today. They took me back and forth, but I was giving them back to back. They gave me the application waiver. They granted it to me. And they gave me the admission. They even gave me some funding. So my point is, sometimes we already sign up ourselves for failures when the chances are still there. Simisola was talking about, even if you don't have a first class or a 2-1, there are chances those chances are the chances that we often do not utilize. It can be scary. It can appear undoable, but is it impossible? No. Is it difficult? Yes. Is it unattainable? No. Is it unachievable? No. So the question is, what is your plan? And this is what I tell people. You don't want to apply to Cambridge or Harvard and then show that you have money. You're not going to get any money, because the 1 million naira that you think you have, it is, by the time you convert it now to dollars or you convert it to pounds, you discover that poverty is even a senior brother to what is wrong with you. Do you understand? So at the end of the day, when you're talking about finances, make the application. If you don't make an application, it's not going to come to you. And I think this is my first time of meeting Gabriel. virtually. I've heard about him. Gabriel did something last year, and I was stunned, because I was advised to do something, but I'm like, no, this thing is too scary. But look at him today. Look at him. Did he go to Cambridge? Yes. Is he working in a top law firm? Yes. So nobody will celebrate your failures, your hard work with you, unless you become a success. Now people begin to use your failures, whatever that is wrong with you, or whatever you pass through, to then begin to kill you. So my point, I know I talk too much, but this is the point. The point is always try to apply. There is always money somewhere. It may not come to you 100%, but at least the percentage that comes to you, you get it. But the money, the national, international cake that they are sharing, try to get part of it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. And I don't think you talk much. I mean, everything you said was really, really helpful. And since Gabriel was mentioned, I'd like to ask Gabriel. So, like, in terms of, we know scholarships essentially assist in financing postgraduate studies, but when scholarships are not available, what options would you advise an applicant to bear in mind, to sort of consider when applying not just when applying, but also when, finance. And so, I mean, you don't get a scholarship application. What else can someone do? Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Yinka. That's a very interesting question, because that was a situation I found myself in last year. I got into Cambridge, but then I watched every single scholarship application, hit the brick wall. So it was not a good place to be in, at the time. So, but what did I do? The first thing was that I don't know where the courage came from. Maybe it was from village people, but I just knew somehow that I was going to go to Cambridge. But I didn't know how. I didn't know how, but I just knew that I would go to Cambridge. So there were lots and lots of suggestions from friends. People wanted me to set up a GoFundMe. I didn't like that idea, because I had seen what those before me who tried it experienced. In fact, I have a friend who set up a GoFundMe, and it was shared on a WhatsApp group, and someone said, "Oga, must you go to Oxford? Isn't there Unilag?" And that's like one of the most charitable things that people had said to him, because there were worse and worse comments that people made. So I didn't want to open myself up for that kind of, unkind comments. So, but eventually, the pressure was so much that I said, okay, fine. If you guys want me to set up a GoFundMe, then you have to do it yourself, because I can't do it myself. So I was very fortunate enough to have friends who were happy to help me set it up. But guess what happened? I didn't raise up to £700, even though my target was over 40,000. So bottom line is GoFundMe didn't work for me. So what did? I reached out to a lot of persons. I sent emails to all the big men in Nigeria, just name them. I reached out because I was really, I would say maybe desperate, at that time, because I really needed to raise this money, but I didn't know how to. And it was a lot of money. £40,000 was over 20 million at the time, right? So, and I'm not sure, okay, I won't disclose how much I had in my bank account at the time. So, but I was nowhere close to what I was looking for. So, yeah, so I reached out to a lot of persons, and I can tell you categorically that over 90% of them did not even acknowledge my email. I'm sure a lot of people on this webinar have been in that situation before. So, but what I tell people is that at the end of the day, I am not recommending what I did to anyone, because I didn't enjoy it. I mean, unless you're like me, you just believe that, oh, okay, somehow this thing will just work out. because the truth is I don't wish this on anyone. But if you ask me whether I would have given up on myself, like looking back, I can't say no now, because just as Mary said, it worked out for me, right? So, but what I'll say is, if you're applying for graduate studies, funding is number one. That's the truth of the matter. Funding is number one. Even if unless you get into Harvard, where like Harvard will make sure you attend their school. Victor and Faith can prove me wrong, right? Well, Cambridge, you are on your own, literally, right? Unless you get the Gates Cambridge or the Commonwealth or Chevening, and we can discuss about what to consider even, because there are conditions attached to some of these scholarships. Well, if you don't get any of these scholarships, you're on your own. And that was the situation I was in. So, but what happened eventually was that at the end of the day, it was my family members that came together. I won't tell you whether they sold land in the village, but it was family members that came together and contributed a reasonable chunk of this money. I had a couple of mentors, benefactors contribute, and that was how I managed to travel. At the time I left, I hadn't even raised up to 30% of what I was looking for. But like I said, something just told me somehow that, that somehow I was going to, finish. So, but I enjoyed, or I benefited from the generosity of the Squire Fund in Cambridge and of my college, St. Catherine's, and of the university itself. So I guess they probably said, this boy don't come. We can't send him back, right? So, but it took a lot of courage, and I'm not saying anyone should follow my path because it was a tortuous one. Whilst my mates were reading, I was thinking about how to raise money, for my tuition. So if you have the kind of courage that I had, then maybe you want to try it out. But if you don't, and I have a couple of friends who got into top schools, but they didn't get funding, and they applied the following year, and some of them eventually got funding. So if you know that you don't have the courage to embark on the kind of journey I did, if you know you don't have the courage to go to the public to ask for money, I didn't have that courage. My friends were the ones who set it up for me, right? I didn't even have the courage to post it, like check my Facebook, check my social media. I couldn't, because it was a pandemic. People were struggling to feed, and your own problem is I want to go to Cambridge. So it wasn't a good time to ask me for money, right? And I'm not saying GoFundMe doesn't work. I mean, we know stories of people who used that option and it worked for them, right? But unless you have a number of celebrities who are championing your cause, or you have, yes, basically, and there's that you're willing to keep at it until you raise all the money, and you're willing to take a lot of insults from faceless people, unless you're willing to take all of that risk, which I don't think anybody wants to take. Like in my own case, like I said, I raised just 700, sorry, not 7,000. I'm not saying 700 pounds is not a lot of money. It is, but if looking back, right, would I have allowed my friends to do that? No, I wouldn't. I imagine someone else would have said, well, it worked for them and they don't have any regret. But in my case, and I've heard a lot of people say that it boils down to the people who give you this money eventually might not even be those who will read about you on the internet. It will be people who you are able to reach out to and speak to on a one-on-one basis. I'm not sure anyone will just give you 10,000 pounds because they like your face, right? Of course, miracles happen. I think I've said a lot already, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gabriel, and thank you for sharing your personal experience and for exhibiting courage as well, because I'm sure a lot of us can learn from that. I would want to invite Victor. I can see Victor raising his hand. Victor, would like to hear your comments on this. Thank you.
So I'll be very real with my people, very real. And I think one of the things that helped me was that I didn't make a first class anywhere, law school, university. So I was very real with myself. Like, I don't know that this scholarship is going to come because I'm a smart boy, quote unquote, right? Because I didn't have the papers to demonstrate that, right? So what I would say, this thing that Gabriel just described, I don't know if many of us can do it. I cannot do it too. It takes a special grace to do that. I mean, I know that people who it worked for. I mean, Caleb is here, and I don't know the extent to which it worked. Gabriel just gave his own figures, but I know that it's really tricky, right? So I think when it comes to graduate study, realize that funding is like 70% of the process and your admission is like 30%, except you're applying to Yale and Harvard and Stanford, where the admission is like 70% itself, right? But if you're applying to every other school, and even with these schools I just mentioned, realize, just make it your first point of duty. Funding is number one. Your admission can be number two, quite frankly, and you will still be in a very comfortable spot. What I did, in fact, there were three strategies I adopted, and I will encourage you all to adopt. The first is, of course, apply for the well-known scholarships, right? Apply for. Caleb said that Stanford doesn't have scholarship. Stanford does now. It has this NSC scholarship, doesn't it? Yeah, I think it does. Anyways, so the first.
But it's very competitive.
Yeah, I mean,
extremely.
Yeah, right. So the first thing I would say is, of course, apply for the general scholarships, for the Rhodes scholarships. You have the grades, right? If you have a first class, you have sort of more wiggle room than if you don't have a first class. I know there are more people that don't have first class than people who have first class. So be very real with yourself. If you don't have a first class, and I'm not saying if you have a 2-1 or a 2-2, you can't get a scholarship. But the truth is, a Commonwealth scholarship, a Rhodes scholarship, what's it called? The shared scholarship, the Chevening scholarship, those ones they are very competitive, and your grades play a big role, not a defining or the most defining role, but a big role. So of course, apply for those. Number two is apply to schools that will give you funding as a matter of course. And see, I cannot overemphasize this. Apply to a school that has an institutional funding program. It will save you a lot of stress. And what you can
briefly mention such schools? Sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah, I know that in the US, like I already mentioned, Harvard, like Gabriel said, is true, and Faith can confirm this. If you get into Harvard, they will do everything they can to make sure you come. You just have to let them know you don't have money. You get me? Because for them, the admission is the merit. It's not your funding application. It's if you're able to get in, then you should be able to come, right? So Harvard has that program. I know that Yale has a similar need-based funding program. So you are looking for need-based scholarships, right? You're also looking, I know LSE also does the same need-based funding. That's London School of Economics in the UK. And some, you do the other searches if you're interested, but search for need-based funding from all of these schools. I know there are a couple of more schools in the US that also give need-based funding. So you want to look at those schools, right? So yeah, so need-based funding, schools that have institutional scholarships, you can get that. They also look at schools that have graduate assistantships that pay you, research assistantships and pay you, etc. Then third, they look for cheap schools. If you know that if you're working in a top law firm for 2-3 years in Nigeria, you can save up to 2 million if you're a serious person, right? You can save 2 million. There are schools, I know University of Victoria in Canada, if you have 2.5 or 3 million, you can go there, pay your tuition, and you will not suffer. You will not live a luxurious lifestyle, but you will not suffer. And if you get into University of Victoria, for example, you can then apply to, if you feel like you're not satisfied with that degree, you can then apply to maybe an Oxford or Cambridge to sort of concretize your graduate degree requirement, if you like. Then, yeah, so these are also schools in Europe. I know Luxembourg, for example, University of Luxembourg, they don't charge you for fees. I think you only pay, is it 400 euros? Maybe Tayo would correct me if I'm wrong, but last I checked, it was 400 euros for, what is it called? I think it's application or enrollment fee or registration fee, something like that. So just do a very broad search. When it comes to funding is the main thing, no. Don't go and get admission. I remember when I got NYU for Harvard. I went to American Embassy to make a confirmation about a scholarship I heard of in Abuja. And I got there, I showed the woman one white woman like this, I showed her my admission letter. She looked at me, I just dropped. She said, why would you do this yourself? How would you get this kind of admission? You don't have money to go. I said, don't be angry. That's why I'm here now, to confirm if I can get the money, right? So I'm telling you, please don't go and be applying to Cambridge and Oxford, and then you're not thinking of funding. Thanks and God bless.
All right, thank you so much, Victor, for being very, very, very realistic and candid in your comments. I would invite Simi shortly, but I have my next set of questions are particularly for Temitayo and Faith. But I can see Simi has a comment. So Simi, please, can you please make your comments? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be very brief. I just wanted to add that in terms of when you're searching for funding, like research, like do your research. There are areas that you can look at. So first is there could be course specific funding. So it could be that the faculty that you're applying to has some kind of funding, and it could be that they have that funding for specific courses, you know, within that faculty. There are some that could be faculty wide. There are some that could be university wide. There are some that could be country. So if you're nationality, if you belong to a particular nationality or something, so you should do like very wide research. Some of those funding you might find in the faculty's website, on their website. Some you might find on the graduate funding, university-wide, you know, websites. So you just have to do a lot of research to find different opportunities and not just stick to one particular stream. You could also find government scholarships. There are some organizations and institutions and companies that provide scholarship. So you just have to do a very, very wide search. And then sometimes, even when you get into the school, for example, if you didn't have funding before you went in, and just like, you know, Gabriel, you gave it a shot, there could be student aid as well. So sometimes it takes you to get into the system for you to know about some particular, you know, funding or opportunities, and not scholarship now, but some schools provide for student aid where you don't have enough money. They provide some loans that, you know, some interest-free loans, and then over time they even paid up for you. So you just have to do these research and, you know, find the opportunities that exist out there and not just stick to one. You know, if does this faculty have funding, no, and then you go on to the next. I think you should just do very wide research when you see a university that you like to attend, and see if there are other ways for you to fund it outside of the faculty in itself.
If there was some more time, I would have loved to speak to funding in Europe. I think it's quite interesting. There's no school in Europe that would ask you to pay $60,000, $70,000 or euros as tuition. Well, are you buying the faculty? So not exactly, but yeah. So funding in Europe is quite very, I think it's favorable for people from our region. Yeah. So the school that I went to, it's an institute per se, in a really nice school in Belgium. It's the only school in the whole of Belgium, which is the capital of the EU, that offers data law and specialization. So it's kind of a system. But the funding arrangements in there are so generous that if you do a proper motivation letter, you get a full tuition waiver, a full scholarship for your tuition, which is about what, 13,500 or 14,000. It was recently increased. So when people come and when they make those applications, they easily get them. Not easily per se, because it takes some tricks. You need to be able to know the right things to say. I was fortunate to get some insight into how they make decisions on this scholarship application by virtue of my position on the faculty board when I was a student in the LLM program. And I realized that all they look for, significant things that they look for are the kind of jobs that you've done in the past, your income level, because they ask you to submit some documents too. This is very prevalent in Europe. They ask you to submit pay slips, to submit documents that evidence the kind of your financial background. And when they look at this, it's entirely merit-based. And this concerns scholarships that are offered by the school, school per se. But there are other programs in the EU, lots of programs. There's the popular Erasmus program. One very nice program like that just encourages people to come from everywhere. I would advise people to particularly look up that program. That program, you can school in some of the best schools in Europe for free. They pay you everything. They pay you for your flights. They pay for your accommodation. They even pay you stipends every month, so that you have a seamless and postgraduate program for about a year or two. And you can even structure it in different schools. You can attend as much as 3 to 4 very lovely schools in the space of 2 years. Apart from this, there are other nice, tuition waiver opportunities, funding opportunities here and there. There are some that are organized by the government. the government of the country would just put some money down for students that need it. If you want money, come and take it. But apart from even the funding opportunities, the tuition are relatively cheap too. There are some schools in the EU, very lovely schools, very lovely programs with nice curricula that you attend, and then when you hear the tuition is like maybe 900 euros for a postgraduate studies. I mean, it's not exactly Harvard. If you're looking at the kind of repute or reputation that comes from studying at Harvard, of course you won't get such in those schools, but it would provide you a very nice template to aspire for something bigger. Trust me, I think it's easier if you're applying with a solid degree from EU to schools like Harvard or Cambridge than to apply from Nigeria. So a lot of people use Europe as the top because they get cheap education in Europe, relatively cheap education in Europe, and then you can make big applications elsewhere. So people may want to do, or you guys may want to do some research on that bit too. A country like Germany offers tuition free entirely for many of its master's degree programs. The most important thing is to get in. Once you've gotten in and you can show evidence of sustenance for the whole year, you come and then you do your master's degree for free. Could be an LLM, it could be an MSc, but you don't pay a dime. You don't pay a dime. And this is it's not a scholarship per se, it's a government program. It's just like that. You don't need to start looking for money to pay school fees. And you get quality education in some of the best schools in Germany. So I would advise people to look at these opportunities, to look at this more convenient structure for funding.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Temitayo. And I think all speakers have actually, they've overemphasized one thing, and that's research. And they've actually thoroughly explained as much as possible in terms of financing a postgraduate program. Unfortunately, I might not be able to get other speakers on to comment on this, and I would save responses on next segment for Faith and Geoffrey. So Chioma will be handling next segment. Thank you so much, and Chioma, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Can you hear me? Yeah, just about how best to maximize the experience, the postgraduate experience. So first off, while running the postgraduate program, are there specific things that you would advise that we do to get the best experience out of it? And if you were working alongside whilst handling or undertaking your studies at the university, how did you manage that and still get the best out of it? Faith said something about juggling being a mom and being a student. So I think that this is something she might be in a great position to address.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So I think that the first thing is to ask yourself the why. This is why what I always say, start with your why. Why do I want to get a master's degree? Why am I choosing Germany? Why am I choosing EU? Why am I choosing the US? Why? And when you understand your why and then you write it down, which is something that I did. I remember at Harvard, I kept going back to that document to say, why did I come to Harvard? Especially when there's so much going on. You have your classes, you are juggling this, you're trying to juggle that. It always helps you to come back to the focus of why did I start this journey in the first place? And what does it mean to me personally? So when you understand the why, not because everybody is going for masters, not everybody that goes for the masters, even in top schools, get jobs immediately afterwards. It didn't always turn out the same for everybody. So when you understand your why and you hold on to your why, and you also understand the place of God and grace in the things that you're doing, then you kind of have a clear understanding. So for me, I had my why on why what I wanted to do. Of course, obviously I'd worked for 10 years. So at that point in my life, at that point in my career with family, with young kids, I was very clear on what I wanted. The knowledge for me was really, really important. And so when I got in selecting my courses, in choosing the professors I was going to take their classes and everything, I was really very, very, very deliberate. And because I knew that I went with my kids, like I said, my young kids, I knew I had to structure, I had to have less time for socials, evening events that span into the night. And I had to refocus. I had a calendar. My calendar was everything. Even if it's a 30 minutes, I want to go get something at the store kind of thing, it's on my calendar. So when I open my calendar on a Monday or on a Sunday, I can see everything. It's always full. Everything I have to do for that week, activities that are important to me. I check the school calendar because there's always activities for like every week, different talks, different conferences. I always research them ahead of time, look at the ones that are important to me, place it on my calendar. Anything that is not on my calendar, it's not important. I don't get pulled away during the day doing things that I really didn't plan for. I couldn't afford to do that. And then in terms of how managing that and rolling into different universities, at least at Harvard, I know NYU, I think Columbia and some other schools also do this. They organize what they call like job fairs, where you can actively start applying for jobs, even while you are in school, and jobs that you can do after you graduate. Again, like I said, everybody's trajectory is different. Not everybody gets interviews. When you get interviews, it's a whole new vibe in terms of how you prepare for those interviews. It takes up a whole lot of your time. And then, true to the offer period and true to what you're going to be doing afterwards. So what I would say for first is know your why. First of all, focus on getting the most out of your degree. Getting the most out of your degree, getting the most in terms of knowledge, getting the most in terms of meeting people, whatever is important to you. If meeting people is what is the most important to you in that degree, meet as many people as possible from different nationalities. You're going to have connections all around the world, and then moving on from that, from the knowledge, focusing on getting a job, which is also really, really, important postgraduate. There are different strategies, there are different, things to do, reaching out to people directly. And for me, my own journey was kind of different. Again, my journey was kind of different because of my particular circumstance. I can't just like pick up today and decide, oh, I'm moving to, let me say Washington, for instance. There's just so many things I have to put into consideration. My children's schooling, is it going to be a right neighborhood for them? Am I going to be able to provide ABC for them? So there was always that constant thinking and strategizing and planning, not just for myself, but also for my kids and for my family as a whole. So it's a whole different vibe when it came to like the job search and then what to do and where to be subsequently after. But what I'm going to say is that generally, like I've said from the beginning, know your why. When you understand your why, you're going to be very focused. If other people are taking up jobs in Geneva, if you know your why is not in Geneva, you're not even going to bother with applying into those places. There are some places that I didn't even bother applying into some jobs because I know that I just can't do this. When I check maybe this country and I see school fees $36,000 per child or £600 per, I'll be like, okay, what am I earning? Even if I'm earning XYZ, by the time I put this amount away for schooling for my kids, then what is left? If you understand what I mean. So if you understand your why, you will be very focused. And then also importantly, understanding the place of grace, depending on who you are, if you believe in God, if you're religious, if you're not, always also understanding that everybody's journey is different. Never compare. Yes, get as much advice as possible as you can get, but still always focus on yourself. Focus on your journey with God and understanding the place of grace and always continually asking for that grace in your decisions so that you don't waste your time on doing some things that at the end of the day doesn't even turn out to be, as they say that the place we were looking at, the Yoruba saying, there was no, how do they say it? There's no direction or there's nothing coming out of there. It's a Yoruba saying, for just see, like there's nothing coming out of there. So you don't even bother those kind of things. So thank you.
That's helpful. That's very, very helpful. And there's something that Gabriel had said earlier that I'd like to refer to because he was talking about how like his situation was not very enviable because he had to juggle school and working and thinking about his situation. But I wanted to ask, how did you surmount that particular obstacle? Like for people who know already by virtue of know their financial circumstance and where they're going to school, that they'll have to do both work and study. What strategies would you say are best to adopt to still get the most out of your postgraduate program and not go bankrupt or get sent back because you don't have money? So what would you say would be the best strategies to adopt to do?
Okay, so thanks, Chama. So I'm going to give a very short answer because I didn't work during my time at Cambridge. But one of my major preoccupations was how to get money because Cambridge was gracious enough, well, my college was gracious enough to let me pay in installments. But the fact that I didn't have all the money and I didn't know where it was going to come was a source of worry for me. So I had to, what I said was I had to juggle studying and and fundraising, fund hunting, whatever you want to call it, because I had to keep on sending reminders to people. Okay, you promised to give me X, Y, Z. What happened? So sorry. Am I going to get that money? And as you would imagine, not everyone who makes promises, keep those promises. So it's not a position you want to be in. It's not a situation you want to be in at all. But I guess I'm going to address the issue of job hunting whilst pursuing your LLM, which is something I'm able to speak to. Yeah, thanks.
All right, so we'll come back to that, but then Geoffrey, yes, so Geoffrey did work. So Geoffrey, could you speak to that? Like, how are you able to juggle both and still get the best out of both worlds, so to speak?
I think the thing for me is that I was working not necessarily because I needed it to finance my program. My scholarship was already sufficient to finance my program. So I was working because I was interested in the particular job I was doing. So I had the opportunity to work on security enforcement matters in the US with a particular center at NYU. So I quickly jumped at the opportunity, not necessarily because of the money, but because it's something that was important to the career I was looking at. But I think the basic thing really goes back to understanding why you are doing the program, because that will determine to what extent you prioritize things. So if, for instance, you need to work to finance your studies, it means that maybe somehow what matters or what may matter most to you is not necessarily being the best student in your graduate class. It might be getting a job, and which means you would have to prioritize, for instance, searching and hunting for a job while you are in school over, for instance, the particular grades that you make in your courses, which means that in addition to your work, which you definitely need because you need the money from there to sustain yourself, the next thing that comes after that will probably be how do you get a job, because that's how things are going to make sense to balance up once you finish the program. Because outside Nigeria, really, most times grades don't necessarily get you the job. For instance, in the US where I am, a lot of emphasis in terms of job hunting goes into networking and meeting people. That's how most people typically get jobs in the US. In Nigeria, we call it connection. But the difference with Nigeria is that sometimes the connection approach in Nigeria does away with merit. In the US, things like connection are very important, but they emphasize it in the form of networking, because even though you get to know people in potential places that would employ you, you will still need to meet that merit criteria the organization requires before you are hired. But that's how you most times get to the door. So, but essentially the main thing is prioritizing things for yourself. So if you need the money and you get a job in school, it's often not usually easy to get jobs while like from your school anyway. But when you have one, you could decide to prioritize it and then think of what else to prioritize. Is it your studies? Is it looking for a job? It's usually very difficult in schools in the US because the approach in the US is that lecturers don't necessarily lecture. They give you materials in the whole wide world to read before every class. And if you didn't read those materials, you you certainly can't participate very well in the class. So you also need to make out time for those. So essentially prioritize things, organize and also plan your day, just as Faith did mention. Make sure you are not putting energy into things that are not important or are not leading you to the reasons why you are doing the program, essentially.
That's very helpful. It's extremely helpful. I think the recurrent theme is just really knowing why you're there and why you're doing what you're doing, because that seems to really give you direction as to other steps that you take. But then I also wanted to ask Simi, because I noticed that you did your LLM at McGill and now you're in the UK doing an MSc. And I wanted to find out like how that transition has been. Were there specific steps that you needed to take? Are you working whilst doing these things? Did you have to like requalify to do certain things, or has this been a smooth transition for you?
Yeah, thank you, Chima. I think it was pretty smooth for me. I did apply while I was doing my master's at McGill, and then so immediately after I was done, I started that one. I didn't have to qualify. I just did normal application process. I was working at McGill, though, did a couple of internships, research with the Institute for Health and Social Policy. I also did some graduate assistant work, which I still do alongside. So yes, it was quite a lot of work to juggle these things together, but it wasn't complicated, and it's not like I'm not practicing law per se. So I didn't have to qualify for anything, but all through, it's been pretty smooth. And I would also mention that because of COVID, there's been allowance for remote study. And so, for example, I was supposed to be at Oxford during the summer, but because of COVID, there was allowance for people to remain in their countries to continue the study. And that's what I opted for because of the convenience of traveling and doing all the tests and all that. So that has also worked in my favor in some sort of way. But it's been pretty smooth.
I see. Okay, and there's a specific question for Faith from our YouTube, but then I'd like to also tie that in to another question that we have, because she said she moved after her master's, she moved to Canada, and someone has said that they'd like to know how, like, the process for requalifying, what you need to do, and someone specifically said that she'd like to know how you manage moving with kids because she's married. So that's the question for you.
Okay, thank you for that question. I'm going to start with the first one. I would say that my journey to Canada was very independent from like my postgraduate journey. So this was something I started working on, I think, even before I felt I wanted to apply for like my master's and all. So yeah, if I remember well, yes, I started that journey earlier. And then I decided I wanted to do my master's in the US. I did my applications, they came in, and I just like traveled. And then this eventually came sometime along the line. And it was something that based on different conversations, based on family and different considerations, we decided that yes, this was the right move to make at that time. So I would say in terms of requalification, so right now I'm a US attorney. I have a law license from New York. I'm qualified to practice law in New York. And so right now I'm a US attorney in my current employment. So I don't have a Canadian law license yet. I don't have a Canadian law license right now. So to practice Canadian law, there's a whole different process. I would refer you to go to the NCA website. I'm going to look for it and maybe post it on the chat room. You're going to find a whole lot of information on what you need to do. It's a whole process, the different exams you're going to write and then to qualify. But I don't have a Canadian law license. Now, I have a foreign legal consultant permit from the Law Society of Ontario, which for you to practice law in Ontario, a foreign law advice or the foreign law, you need to get that license. You need to get that permit, which is renewed annually by the Law Society of Ontario. And so that is what I have. That is what I have, which qualifies me to practice New York state law and US federal law in Ontario. So that said, I hope that answered the questions. And so certainly having a master's degree from the US qualifying is also very useful, obviously, and relevant here as well, as you can see in my case. And then I'm moving with kids. I'll just say that is just like that is just like, again, like I said, knowing your why. When you know your why, you would not be deterred. It will work, because in the space of did I say 2 or 3 years, I moved across 3 countries and was it 4 or 5 cities, you know. And this is something that, because I know what I wanted, you kind of just get that strength to just like move on. You have to be strong for yourself, you have to be strong for the kids, and you have to explain to them, really, you know, it's really different. When you explain to them, they understand. You don't just spring surprises on them and say, oh, by the way, we are now moving to Canada. No, because they have their own friends as well. You know, they go, even though they are young, they have friends in school, they like the school, they like this particular place, they have a preference for this teacher. So you can't just tell them, oh, next week we are moving. No. You have to have that conversation consistently, give them information. This is what Canada is, it's closer to the US, it shares a border, you know, and then they kind of understand it that way. So I'll just say that it's a personal thing for the married people, and it's both for men and for women as well. I don't think it's just peculiar to women, because most times you have a lot more responsibility in terms of caring for young children. But I would say that do not let that like deter you. I think someone was saying, it was Gabriel that was saying all manner of things people told him. You know, I remember when I tell people that I was going for my master's, and they were just like, oh my goodness, how are you going to do? I'm like, I applied, me that I got the admission, do you not think I already thought this out and have a plan on what I want to do? Why do you think that your opinion matters that much to me? So people are going to say all manner of things, but you're just going to focus on why you're doing it. And once you keep pushing on, everything will eventually fall into place. So if Canada is something that you're interested in, I would recommend, I think Simi has already posted that information. It's something that you should look out for, and definitely start the process before coming in. And that's another whole vibe. This is not like a Canada conversation call, so I'm not going to dwell so much on that. But in terms of schooling with your kids, working with your kids, moving to another country with your kids, it is totally doable. It is totally doable. Kids nowadays, they have a very fundamental understanding. You don't really so much treat them like babies. Even like a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, you explain things to them and they understand it. You know, tell me, oh, so you're working to get to become a lawyer in the US? I said, yes, especially when you're studying and you're trying to get things done. They kind of understand, and then they give you your space, and then you have your space to do your thing. So it's something that you definitely can juggle, and with the help of God as well, it's absolutely doable.
Thank you, Faith. I think Victor also had a similar thing where he transitioned from what he said. You studied in America and now you're working for a British firm. So if you could speak to the issue of requalifying, if that's something you had to do, or you can also say it hasn't been relevant.
Sure, thanks. So I didn't requalify in the UK. I'm working in the UK as a US lawyer, and I'm practicing mostly US law or aspects of international capital markets that border on US rules and US laws or the US markets. So having said that, I think Faith already mentioned something about how the whole system works, and certain schools like HLS and a few of them have the job fair. And I think it's really across the US. Yeah, a lot of schools that do the job fair, and then through the job fair, you know, there are no guarantees, obviously, but you can get a job. You can get a job, and I have to just there's too many stories of too many people who went through the same process and it didn't work out, and it doesn't make any one person better than the other. It's just you see how palpable the grace of God really can be in your lives, and again, doesn't that remove the grace of God from other people's lives who it didn't work for? Sometimes these things are just redirections, you know. So yes, so I don't know if there's more specifics if you want me to talk about the job right now, But as per requalifying, I'm only practicing as a US lawyer, and I'm due to take the New York bar in a couple of months.
I see. I
I don't know if I can.
So that's helpful.
Sorry, Chama,
yes, you can, Tayo.
So
you can
I get a lot of comments on or inquiries on how I was able to get a job or to work as a lawyer, or how I'm able to work as a lawyer in a country where, in a civil law jurisdiction for one, and in a country where 3 national languages are spoken, none of which is English. So in Belgium, there are 3 national languages, French, Dutch, and German. We don't speak English here. But somehow I am able to work as a law firm with a domestic law firm with an international flavor. It's an entire law firm per se, but it started from a domestic practice. So it's a very weird, a very unique situation for me. So it kind of started. I think it's premised on the master's degree that I did. So I did a master's degree in international and European law with specialization in data law. Now, the kind of law that I practice is not Belgian law per se, it's European law. Now, the EU itself has a very unique legal system. It's a unique system on its own with the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. And they're very concentrated studies that are dedicated, marked for, tailored in that direction. And that was what I did. And I was able to fit into an organization that needed my services. Now, so in the job market, the European job market is very peculiar. It's peculiar. I'm not sure whether the same operates in the US, but unlike what we have in Nigeria, where you can do everything, you can do all sorts, and then somehow you're looking to transition, you can easily get a job. It doesn't really work like that here. In fact, when you see job adverts on social media, on other platforms, they are very specific. Usually they ask for privacy lawyers with 5 years experience. They ask for IP lawyers. Nobody's asking for a corporate commercial lawyer or something. It's always very specific. And so for me, when I came, my practice in data law was basic. It was very theoretical, nothing practical. And I realized that I had to really scale on my knowledge. I had to, develop a solid profile that made me easily transition into the labor market. So, and that was why I had to do a job. I had to get a job very quickly. I had to jump on many volunteering opportunities. And I was still working remotely in Nigeria. I was team lead in my law firm in Nigeria. I was able to remotely lead my team, even while I'm doing a postgraduate study, or doing postgraduate studies here in Europe. But at the same time, I had to look for opportunities that would quickly help me develop. And that was what I did. And when I graduated, there were organizations that, because of the diverse nature of my background, expertise in the African legal landscape, and then expertise like training in the European space, it was quite unique. And there were organizations that were willing to take me on and leverage on that, because there are lots of interest in the African market and very few experts in that space here. So for me, that's why I was able to get the opportunity that I am in now. And I've been able to do a lot of things on that basis. Incidentally, there is a scheme here in Belgium where you can transition, even if you come from a common law background, you can transition into a Belgian lawyer. There's a scheme where you're allowed to requalify as a Belgian lawyer, as a foreign trained lawyer in Belgium. And I started on that scheme, I was already on that scheme, but I had to stop because for the purpose of this event, I identify as a legal counsel or a lawyer at a law international law firm, but I've actually transitioned into a much different role in a different country that I will be starting soon. So yeah, it's tricky, but it's completely doable. Thank you, Chema.
Thank you, Taya. Thank you very much. So we're moving on to the last set of questions, which are for Mary. So it's a PhD related question, but I think Simi can also jump in because he has a tilt about Canada as well. So we'll see how we'll maneuver that. But this person would like to know, the person is interested in pursuing their PhD in Canada, but getting a professor as a supervisor in Canadian universities has been an issue. So I think it's about the cold mail thing. So I don't know if you have any experience in that regard, something that you could just for some direction for the person. how do you fish out a potential supervisor? And if they're not answering or they're not responding to your email, what do you do? How can you make yourself a better applicant?
Okay, thank you very much, Choma. I must state that you don't just go online and start looking for a professor, right? The first thing is to identify the schools you want to attend and then look at the faculty, And I must say again, personally, I never messaged any professor. I just looked at the website of the University of Oxford and looked for someone that looked like me or looked like what I wanted to do. So you should understand that, like Geoffrey said, there are over 200 countries. There are probably more than 200 million applicants. So a professor currently has what he's working on. He currently has supervisors and supervisees are supervising. So when you email a professor and they don't respond to you, don't take it too personally. What you just need to do is move on to the next person or just take a leap of faith. Now, the reason why people advise that you email professors is so that you get a soft landing by the time you are making your formal application. So if it does not work, it is not the end of the journey. But of course, you cannot be applying to a school. Let's say you're applying for data privacy to be supervised on data privacy, and they don't have a faculty on data privacy. It doesn't make sense. Apologies for using the word, but it's a waste of time. It's counterproductive. So the first thing is to shortlist the schools, their rich schools and their safety schools. So rich schools are the schools that you're trying to reach, the likes of Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, top schools, you say. Safety schools are schools that are within your reach, that, okay, you're competitive, but not as much as, the top schools. So you want to look at the website. Of course, you cannot want to apply to 1,000 schools in the world. It doesn't make sense again. So you want to, shortlist schools, the way they will also shortlist you into their faculty. You want to shortlist schools and then take your time to look at their website and look for a professor that looks like you. Now, again, many people also make some funny mistake. They've gone to a faculty, maybe Faculty of Law of Cambridge, for example, and they have 5 professors, that look like them or look like what they are doing. And you email these 5 professors to be your supervisors. They speak to themselves in network. So they talk about, oh, there's a Nigerian that messaged me, or there's a Nigerian that contacted me. Oh, Daniel, what's his name? You don't want to be a Confucianist. So my advice is shortlist schools, shortlist the faculties, then shortlist the professors. If they respond to your messages, fine. If they don't, fantastic. Still go ahead to make your application. It doesn't cost you anything to make your application. Yes, you may think you want to pay for your application fee. I've told you. Also, always apply for a waiver, even if you don't get your waivers granted. The first thing, if you do not make an application, you never get a response, right? So always try to explore every opportunity and every avenue before cutting yourself short. Thank you.
That's helpful. Thank you. And Simi, there's also another question in the live chat that I'd like to bring to your attention because you had said something about it earlier. And it's in relation to like how to maneuver with grades again. Just if you could just summarize what you had said at first about like what the chances are for a person who say is a 2-1 graduate, but like a low 2-1 or a high 2-2, still get into a school. I know you said something, perhaps the person didn't hear that or what at that time.
Okay, sure. Yeah, first of all, regarding the PhD question, I'll just speak to Canada in particular. For Canada, I think that it's very big on your research. So when you're emailing professors, you're not just emailing them asking them to supervise you. You're going to show them what you want to study. So your research proposal should be ready. You're emailing your research proposal to them and then giving like a brief background and profile, your brief background and profile. So that research proposal is like I think it's like almost 90% of your admission, and then or even whether or not the outcome of that request that you're asking the professor to supervise your work. So even when we were talking about the application package for Canada, I think that your personal statement is not even as, it's very important. But I think your research proposal is much more important than your personal statement, because it's very research intensive here. And then you have options of thesis and non-thesis. So even for people that are doing non-thesis programs, they still have to submit a research proposal. So I think your research proposal is very important. And so when you're reaching out to professors, you're showing them what you want to study. And of course, you're reaching out to professors that are within that field. And you cannot, reach out to a professor who is doing, international trade and saying, oh, you want to research data privacy. You can't do that, right? So it has to be someone who's within your field, and then you're researching. And you could also look for articles, books that these professors have written and reference them. Oh, you've read this and this and this, and you think that, it's interesting. Align what you've seen them write or heard them speak to what you've done in the past as well. So you draw a correlation and see where your similarities lie and give them reasons to work with you. So those are tips on reaching out to professors. I know that it was mentioned that sometimes you don't have to reach out to professors. Some schools require that you have a professor to supervise your work before you actually submit your application. So sometimes it's a requirement, and then sometimes it's just you wanting a soft landing, as Mary mentioned. So that's for the PhD application. For the question regarding the grades, I'll just reiterate, it's really just, telling them or showing your excellence besides your academic grades, right? It's not only about how high your grades are, your GPA, or having a first class. It's also showing what you can do besides that, outside of that. And many schools want to see your extracurricular activities. They want to see the leadership responsibilities that you've held. So showing these will, put you in a good position, as well as your professional experience, as I think Faith also mentioned earlier on when she spoke. Showing that you have experience in this field, then showing your trajectory over time, right? So even if you didn't have a 2-1 or a first class, what have you done besides that? What other courses you might have taken to further, strengthen your expertise in the area that you're seeking to study? So having all these additional experiences and maybe courses can help you to show that you are deserving to be in the program, and then showing how much you benefit from the program. That's also something from your application. It's not just about showing your passion and interest. What are you going to benefit from the program? What are you taking forward from that program? They want to see what you will do with the program afterwards. So showing these can also help you, and also help strengthen your application besides your GPA.
That's help.
I hope that answers.
Absolutely, to a lot of questions in the chat room. So Gregory would like to highlight a few questions pertaining to the job hunt. So that's what he's going to do.
All right, thank you, Chioma. Actually, we've had specific questions for both Victor and Gabriel. So this particular person wants to know how early into your program did you start applying for jobs? And I know one of the speakers made mention of, I think that was Geoffrey, the fact that more or less it's about establishing connections and building a network. But what particular steps did you take? Like, when did you start? What particular steps did you take to get an offer for your current job? And also just to let participants know on our Zoom meeting that the Q&A session is now open. So please, you could drop your questions in the chat box. Thank you. So Caleb, so Gabriel and Victor, thank you.
Victor, do you want to go first? Because you usually make it easier for me.
I would say go for it. I'll come back by India.
All right. Thanks. So I made a short note of what I think I did. What I think stood out for me, because in my case, I actually had 2 job offers before completing my LLM, which were not dependent on me cross-qualifying or me attaining any particular grades. Of course, I knew I had to, do well in my exams. But yeah, I think it was Geoffrey that said something about building a network and then understanding the market. So yes, I'm going to add that it's very important to understand the market. And what do I mean by that? So if you're looking to work in the UK, you want to know what the jobs market in the UK is like. And then you want to understand how to break into that market. It's something that you must do. When do you start doing it? In my case, I started before setting my foot on, before getting to Cambridge. I started looking at opportunities in the top law firms and how to gain market awareness and commercial awareness of the London market. I wanted to work in London or one of these financial hubs. And then what I did was to research the opportunities that someone like me, a Nigerian qualified lawyer who hasn't got a UK education, or sorry, who's looking to get a UK education, can take advantage of. So I asked a lot of questions. So I'm reading from the short note I made. I asked a lot of questions, and because there were people in London, Nigerian lawyers in London, who were working in the top law firms. And because there's LinkedIn, I made sure I reached out to a lot of them. Of course, not everyone would respond, but like Faith said, you don't need anyone's approval. You don't need anyone to approve of your dreams, right? It's normal. It's okay, right? I said here that not everyone will believe in your dreams and even in your abilities, and that's perfectly okay, right? So if for some of you, if you've reached out to people and they haven't responded, I'm sorry, including myself, it doesn't mean in any way that you're not good enough or that you're not going to succeed. It should even encourage you to work harder. So I've talked about the importance of researching the opportunities so that you know what you can do and what you can't. Because there's this misconception, right, that you need to qualify as a UK lawyer to work in the UK, or to join a law firm or to work out of the London offices of a global law firm. Like Victor has confirmed, and I know another friend who also works in Allen and Overy out of the London office. He's not qualified to practice in the UK. I'm not qualified to practice in the UK, although I'm looking to sit the SQE next year. But I'm able to do my work at Queen Emmanuel, because of the nature of the work that I do, because I researched the opportunities that I could get into in line with the experience I had already gathered working in a top tier Nigerian law firm and the kind of, law firms in London that would need the kind of experience that I had. So I had a clear vision of what I wanted to achieve. So I was not in doubt. Of course, I knew what I did not want. For instance, I got a job in Beijing, right, at a multilateral development bank. Now, it was a very good offer, but I couldn't go to Beijing for so many reasons, one of which is, okay, I can't say that in public. But yeah, so I just couldn't go to Beijing, even though it was a fantastic opportunity. And the reason was because I had a clear vision and I knew what I wanted. Then, of course, I reached out to a lot of people. I've said that before. And then I consider myself ambitious. And in every sense of the word, I consider myself ambitious. And of course, one clear evidence is the fact that even though I didn't have funding, I just believed I was going to go to Cambridge. And I imagine that all the other panelists are very ambitious people, and that's why we're all here, right? Being ambitious doesn't mean being careless or taking careless risks. It means being calculated and strategic in what you do, right? So, for instance, I had a short list of the firms I wanted to work in, and I started sending out applications. Of course, there are going to be rejections. Some persons are going to ignore you. Some persons will send, in fact, we don't talk about rejections in public, right? But the truth is, I don't know any professional who's working in anywhere that any of you wants to work in that hasn't gotten one or two, what are we talking about? Tens of rejection emails. I've gotten a couple. In fact, it will surprise you to know that I'm still getting rejection emails from people I don't even want to work for, but that I applied to because, well, I wanted to spread my tentacles and apply to as many places as possible, right? And so I think someone said on this webinar that you shouldn't take it personal. The reason is because there are different considerations, right? Maybe this firm is looking to hire someone who's qualified to practice in that jurisdiction and you're not. Maybe they're looking to diversify. They're looking to hire a woman to fill a particular role, and you happen to be a man. There are just so many reasons, right? And unfortunately, not all organizations give you a feedback like as to why you're being rejected. That's a different conversation. But whether or not rejections are going to come, that's something that's definitely going to happen. So I said here that you need to take rejections in good faith. Just see it as part of the process, right? Don't get bogged down by the number of rejections you've gotten, that you lose sight of the fact that at the end of the day, what you need is one good offer, really. In fact, so in my case, I got 2 offers and I got multiple invitations. But at the end of the day, I just had to accept just one. So, and that's what would always happen. Then I've talked about the importance of starting very early. In my case, I started whilst I was in Nigeria, and the truth is, I told myself the truth. Why was I in Cambridge? I wanted to break into the London markets. Really, that was for me a very important consideration. Whilst I was doing everything I did, everyone had their ambitions. Some of my colleagues just wanted to get through Cambridge. For me, I saw Cambridge as a leeway to get into a top tier global firm. And that speaks, to the importance of having a clear vision, having a clear plan, not just wondering. And I think it was Faith that said, it's not about getting a master's degree, right? Not everyone needs a master's degree. I know a partner in Clifford Chance, a Nigerian, who hasn't got a master's degree. And he went to University of Ibadan. I don't know if I can mention his name here, and he rose through the ranks, and today is a partner at Clifford Chance. I know people who have got master's degrees who are back in Nigeria, and are happy. So you need to know why and whether you actually need a master's degree or even a PhD, or whether, like somebody said, you just want to japa. Of course, I'm not here to judge anyone. People have different reasons, but just make sure you understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, so that you don't make unnecessary mistakes. I think I'll stop here because of time. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Gabriel. I don't know if Victor can quickly speak to this because we're really, really running out of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Truly great points, Gabe. 100% everything you said. I kind of emphasize what Gabe said about starting on time. Gabriel started when he was in Nigeria. That's on another level. But the advice I got, and I'm going to share with you guys, and I think you should take Gabe's advice as well. The moment you get your institutional email address from your school, start applying for jobs. Like, start applying, start reaching out to people and say, hey, I'm not in Cambridge. I am thinking, can we have a chat? That kind of thing. You want to start setting up networking chats with people. And talking about networking, I think was it Geoffrey? I think it was Geoffrey that talked about networking and getting jobs, and the difference between Nigerian networking and connection is that in the US, there is merits to their networking. And it is so true. So I had this networking conversation with a partner at Proskauer, probably if you've heard of Proskauer, and in New York. And he was telling me, there are 2 things we look out for when recruiting people. The first, because he says recruitment is a risk. I don't know if I'll recruit you and you're just a wicked person, or you're not smart enough, or you're a very bad person to work with. That's what he said to me. He said, so how do we streamline people that will recruit? There are 2 things. The first is your smartness. If you're smart, if you're able to do the job. And one way we can tell you can do the job is by the school you go to. So, I mean, it's flawed, but it's safer than just choosing randomly. So if you can get into a Stanford, for example, or if you can get into an Oxford, for example, it sends a signal to the market that there's something about you, right? That they should investigate further. So that kind of crosses the check mark, and I'm talking about markets in the West, mostly London and New York. That's what you're looking at. And I believe it could apply to that jurisdictions as well. So he said to me, if you can get into some of these schools, it tells us that you are smart enough. The second thing is who you know, and it called it, who knows you, and they called it recommendation. Like, as a partner, I want to employ you. I don't have a problem with employing you. You went to Harvard, great. But how do I know you're not a nut job? How do I know that you're not a flat out stupid person or an irresponsible person, or someone who is a nerd, who doesn't socialize, etc. It's when another partner tells me, oh yeah, Victor, I know him, he did this for me, or he's a very, very cool guy, whatever they want to say about you. But knowing people that will say, it's the same about recommendation letters, knowing people that will sing your high praises to other people is helpful. So when you're doing your masters, you have to know what you're looking for. If you're looking for a job, like me and Gabriel, I had similar ambitions with Gabriel. My purpose of doing a master's was to transpose my practice to an international platform and do a kind of practice I was interested in: international capital markets, encapsulating sovereign debts and corporate bonds. That was what I wanted to do. And so when I got to Harvard, or when I started at Harvard, my focus was, okay, what am I going to do? And you will realize that these Oyibos are not like you. They don't have problem. Someone that is coming from France is in your class at Oxford. He's going to practice every night. He's playing around. He's meeting people, and you are there. You're following them. You can't follow them. You have to be very strategic. You have to know how to network, how to apply for jobs, and prepare for interviews. It's a whole long process. And Caleb, who is the convener of this, can maybe open a separate session to talk about job hunting, postgraduate, or whatever, because it's a whole big topic, and there's a lot that people are not telling you. It's not a walk in the park. There's going to be a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifices. Gabriel mentioned rejections. Let me just say it plainly to you. If you have ever been rejected in your life, when you go for grad school, you will enter a new phase of rejection. When it comes to job hunting, you would understand the meaning of rejection. If I show you my Harvard sent items, you'll be stunned. By God's grace, I work at A and O, but this same A and O rejected me 5 times for different other positions. I'm telling you, Clifford Chance slapped me very well with rejections. All of these big law firms, they did me dirty, man. They did me really dirty. So don't think it's just going to happen because you have a fine face, because you have a first class, or because you went to Harvard or Cambridge or wherever. There's the element of God's grace, and I cannot take that away. But there's also the element of putting yourself out there. And I'm not talking about I'm humble and honored to have finished from Harvard on LinkedIn. I'm talking about actually reaching out to people and saying, I have finished. That thing you are putting on LinkedIn post, go and put it to someone, a partner's DM on LinkedIn, and tell him this is what I can bring to your table. This is who I am. It's really about selling yourself. There should be another session entirely for interviewing. I was so fortunate to get 3 job offers, but a lot of it has to be on. It's about the interview. The interviewing by Oyibos. Let me just put it that way. It's not the same interview you do in law firms in Nigeria where it looks like they want to beat you up or come to interview. These guys want to see. I think the first thing they're looking out for is, and I remember I was interviewing with Baker McKenzie, and the partner was telling me, he says, Victor, there's 3 things we're looking for this role. We're looking for someone who has technical skills. We're looking for someone who has the drive, and we're looking for someone who's enthusiastic about the work. And you display all 3. Which part of that is someone that has first class or someone that went to Oxford? It's not there. It's really about how you are able to sell yourself during the interview, telling the partner boldly, Oga, I can make your life easier. You better take me. In the most formal, put it anywhere you want to put it, in the most formal and well put across way. So I think I've covered everything I want to cover, and I'll just wait it for recollection. The first is start on time. The second is rejections do not define you. You just have to keep on pushing harder. There are too many stories I can tell you guys. Like things I applied for, I was confident that if they must take me. They slapped me well with rejection. And the third thing is know why you're at grad school. If you know you're at grad school to get a job, don't be filibustering with people that are there to make first class or distinction. I'm not saying don't make first class, so you can actually absolutely make first class or distinction and still get a job and still focus on getting a job. But realize that getting a job is a whole different process on its own. I tell people I temporarily dropped out of Harvard to prepare for my interviews. For 1 month, I was barely in class. I have to almost another day story. Then finally, God's grace, which is really number one. All this I'm telling you, if God's grace does not accompany you, there are people that have done way better than I have done. There are people that are more smart, that went to better schools. Yes. There are people that worked harder, that were more, they did not. I stop there. Thanks and God bless.
Thanks a lot, Victor. That's always a very candid comment. Thank you so much, Victor. Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you so much, Simi. Thank you so much, Faith, Gabriel. Thank you so much, Geoffrey. And thank you so much, Temitayo. Really, really appreciate your time. And I'll just call on Gabriel Adebayo to just give a vote of thanks because we are 10 minutes out of time, and we would need to wrap up this session.
Sorry, Greg. Why do you call Caleb Gabriel and Gabriel
switching the names.
I don't know what's
every
going on
time.
here.
Well, I call what? Hello?
Call me Gabriel. You do it.
Oh, I told you, Gabriel. I don't know why. Like at I don't know why. I don't know. Apologies. Well, I think I'll take notes just in case of next time. But apologies. Yeah. So I mean, Caleb Adebayo. Thank you. So would like to call on you to please give the vote of thanks. Thank you.
All right. I really enjoyed the session. I mean, I wish we could go on and on and on, but then everyone here needs to go, and the speakers who have generously made their time and made themselves available also have to leave. I really thank everyone, particularly the speakers who have made our time to be here. I know you all have really busy schedules. I mean, I know people who are working really crazy hours. I know some who have to do research and read and all of that. Thank you so much for waking up early in your different time zones, for making out the time, for really sharing candidly. I mean, this is something that people don't get to hear very often. So thank you so much. I want to also thank everyone who attended. I mean, it turned out at the end of the day that the platform could not take more than 100 people, but thankfully, you know, we were streaming on YouTube as well. So everyone who could not join here, we had a number of people also on YouTube listening, and the video will be available on YouTube when this is done. Next week, we'll have the second one, which would have even more speakers. And if you'd like to join as well, it will also have 2 MBA candidates who are lawyers, by the way, who got into top business schools in the UK and in the US. So for those who are interested, please feel free to join that as well. Thank you so much to everyone who made this happen. All the organizers, you know, the guys who are backstage, thank you so much for everything. And I think this is me calling it today and saying, have a wonderful rest of the day. Over to you, Greg.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. We've come to an end. I don't know what to say. I actually don't want to go because I have a lot of questions for our speakers, but it is what it is. Looking forward to connecting with each and every one of our speakers. I'll do my own connecting via LinkedIn. So I hope you please respond to me. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Right. Can I say one more thing? Just for the attendees.
Yes.
So there's a video I have on my YouTube channel, which is about helping 7 steps to get into top schools abroad. That might be helpful to you if you're still looking for more guidance on like application process. It's something that will be really helpful. So yeah, head over there and see how helpful that will be to you. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Stay blessed and bye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.